listeners and participants. Just as an introduction, I'm Sean Tenison. I will be your host this morning as we unpack the Retail Relief Fund. Property Point and Entrepreneurship to the Point are programs that's focused on building entrepreneurship into the ecosystem. Entrepreneurship to the Point is really focused about getting to the point about information that's pertinent to entrepreneurs. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been hosting these webinars to unpack the various relief programs that's out there for entrepreneurs, as we understand that the COVID-19 pandemic has a huge impact on small businesses in South Africa. And like all our previous webinars, this will be available on our YouTube channel at Entrepreneurship to the Point. We also want to encourage you to go and visit the website at www.ettp.co.za, where additional information is available. And then also sign up and register for future webinars. This afternoon, at 1 o'clock, we'll be speaking to SIFA as they unpack the Department of Small Business Development's SMME Relief Fund. This morning, we joined by Estienne de Klerk. He's the SA CEO for Growth Point Properties. He's also the chairman for the SA REIT Association, as well as the spokesperson for the newly formed Property Industry Group. Estienne, welcome. And then also all attendees, please do use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to share and let us know where you're from. And if there's any specific questions, we'll also try to take the time to ask Estienne these questions. So Estienne, maybe just as an introduction, tell us about the new Property Industry Group and its formation.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the opportunity and welcome. Good morning, everybody. Certainly unprecedented times we live in. I don't think any business school ever trained any executive in dealing with these kind of crises. So what you are finding playing out right throughout our economy is quite unique, I think, across the world, to be honest. And Growth Point is a bit of a global business. So we're certainly seeing across the world how this is impacting specifically real estate, and we are seeing the different governments acting in different ways to try and, let's say, avert a health disaster, but at the same time tiptoeing around what is a very difficult situation from an economic point of view. So on the 23rd of March, the president announced a package, let's say, or legislation, which was designed to deal with this crisis hitting our shores. And effectively, he put the country into lockdown. And certainly that had a very specific impact on the real estate industry. So as a response to that, I hopped on the blower with a couple of people in the industry I know. And that included Neil Gopal at Sapoa and Amanda Stops and Stefan Leroux, who look after the Shopping Centre Council of South Africa. And actually it started as a simple WhatsApp group where we started adding, some of the big names in the industry. And these folks really had the biggest exposure to the retail sector specifically. The idea was to start just getting a kind of understanding what guys were doing around hygiene at different shopping centers, the operational management. So it wasn't really designed as a lobby group just initially, but more to try and share some ideas on operational management. And then, from there, it very quickly moved into a scenario that, look, we've got to deal with some real difficult challenges coming to the industry. And really what it is, it's not a association by any means. It's really a group of property owners that are collectively sharing information on a literally live chat to try and deal with challenges that none of us have ever faced.
So, Estienne, maybe just unpack those. So you've spoken about the fact that it's the SA REITs, it's SAPOA and the Shopping Centre Council. Is there a definitive list of all these landlords that someone can go and see whether the landlord that they are renting space from is on this list? What's the reference point in terms of who's in this grouping?
Yeah, look, it's not something that we've published yet, and to put it honestly, we didn't really think about it. The design of the group was really to cover as many of the landowners that we can find that want to join the group. So most of the people are obviously members of SAPOA and SA REIT or the Shopping Centre Council. And then what we also have is we got, several private developers, but they're pretty much all members of these three sectors. So there are, subsequent to us announcing this relief package, we have had quite a few, I would say, potentially disgruntled real estate owners, if you'd like, saying, but how can you guys speak on behalf of the industry and commit us to all these packages? And the reality is that the legal standing of this package, it's voluntary by the landlords that are participating, and even those that weren't participating, to the extent that they are happy to really commit to this, they, that really is the legal standing. So what we can do, and I think it is a valid point, is over the next couple of days, maybe make a bit of a list of those folks that are happy to disclose that they will be committing to these packages. So I can tell you, as we sit here now, pretty much all the REITs, as well as the largest names in real estate, are all on that list, whether it's Burrito, Atterbury, Abland, all these kind of guys have definitely all committed to it. So the big names are definitely on. There are definitely a whole bunch of regional little investors that maybe are not part of it. So
maybe first point of call would be for a business to check the membership listings of SAPOA and SA REIT and Shopping Centre Council. Second point of call is that they would need to engage with their landlord to get a sense whether the landlord is part of the deal. As you mentioned, it's a voluntary grouping of people at this point in time. We'll also make the website links of the various organizations available on the chat. And just then, once again, for the participants, the session is filmed and will be available on the YouTube channel. We're going to get into some of the details now, really. How does this relief package work? Who are the beneficiaries of it? Who are able to, and what's the various categories within those beneficiary listings? You can also just sign up to our newsletter at www.ettp.co.za for future seminar information. And then also use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to engage and ask for some more details. So Estienne, we've got a summary of some of the eligibility criteria and the fund criteria on the screen for the participants as well. But maybe just in your own understanding, take us through who will qualify and what the package is all about.
Thank you. So I think the first principle is this is not a fund, right? All it is a bunch of very well-centered real estate owners that have come to the market and said, we are prepared to offer the smaller and the larger retailers some relief in the form of real discounts or in the form of deferred rental. So in other words, that would effectively be the equivalent of a loan, and this relief package is effectively pivoted on those two principles. I think the other thing that was important to understand was that in the void of knowing exactly how long this COVID lockdown is going to take to open up, we have taken the view that it'll be the 21 days only, and that this relief package deals with April, which is clearly the most difficult month for tenants. But we've also taken cognizance of the fact that you know, if April was going to be difficult, May was going to be worse from a cash flow point of view. So the sector really has addressed the two months specifically. And I think the other question that comes up is, so what if it's extended? What if, you know, this becomes a long-term player? I think the reality is the real estate sector, similar to a retailer or any other business, you know, clearly has limited ability to offer free anything for that matter. Eventually, everybody's business model gets tested from a liquidity point of view, even the biggest companies. So what we are hoping is that this is a bridge to some of the packages and the stimulus packages and the liquidity facilities that will be coming from either the financial services sector, from government, from some of the things that Sean has been talking about that will be kicking in. We are realistic in that those packages take time to roll out as an industry and into the industry, and as such, we had a deep understanding from the real estate point of view that we needed to do something really quickly. So I think the first couple of principles is this is a 2-month package, that it is for clients in good standing. So the reality is if you were a delinquent client and you're already in a process with a landlord, then this wasn't a get out of jail free card for those tenants. It was a situation where the tenants had to be, you know, in good standing, and that the money that we're trying to spend as an industry gets spent in the right places.
So in good standing, the rent is paid up to date. They're not in arrears with their landlord.
Correct. Or, you know, that if they are in arrears, that there's some kind of a arrangement. In other words, they're somebody of good standing. They're not, you know, been in a legal dispute with the landlord or in legal proceedings. I think that's maybe you know, the sort of view that was taken from the industry point of view. So I think that's a key principle, and the other key principle is that by accepting this package, that whoever the businesses that is actually asking for this relief also makes an undertaking that they have to ensure that they continue to employ their staff and that they won't retrench any staff in this period. So why are we doing this? We're doing it because, you know, clearly we're trying to help our clients, but we're also doing it from a national corporate responsibility point of view. We feel as an industry, if we're going to spend, I mean, to give you an idea, I think we estimate that this package, if you take it right across the real estate industry, you're talking about 2 to 3 billion rand of either discounts or relief being offered, that it actually should be helping the right profile of client, and also that those clients that are getting the benefit, you know, must act responsibly in turn. So this is an undertaking that all of those retailers have to make. So the third thing is that these rental reliefs, you know, do not include your operating taxes and recoveries. So recoveries of utilities and rates and taxes, those assessment rate recoveries, etc., are excluded, and they are effectively still payable over this period of time. So the relief really speaks to what we call as rental operating costs and parking rental. And that really is the bulk, clearly, of the cash flow on a monthly basis. So okay. I think each landlord also has a discretion in terms of the framework. So we're going to get to the exact details right now, but there is a level of discretion, and it speaks to a limited amount of cash available from landlords. So these guys also have expenses, and that has to be also appreciated, that what we're trying to do is we're trying to help those that need help more. And it does mean that you have to be a bit more picky and choosy on who can get more and less relief. So the guys that need more relief, we have categorized those, and we are going to target them more. The commercial and industrial side, as well as hospitality, because of the different nature of the impact, we've really said that that's going to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis for landlords, and it's not really the ambit of this discussion as we've got here. And then the package also assumes that the lockdown does not extend past the 21 days at this point. So this is a package, as I said, for 2 months. It can maybe be squeezed out a little bit till the end of April, but the reality is that we as an industry have limited resources, and that's really ultimately at this stage what we can offer. And then to the extent, and I must admit my personal view is I am a little bit skeptical whether the insurance industry will step up, but to the extent that businesses have insurance covering business continuity and all those kind of things, and they are successful, then clearly the idea is that they put that into the mix, and that they don't double benefit, if you'd like. So we're really trying to help people that need help in the right way.
So just a point of
clarification,
Estienne. So this would be for retail properties and tenants within those retail properties. If you are a retailer within a commercial or industrial property, so for instance, a restaurant or hairdresser within a commercial space, this would not be applicable to you.
So what we've agreed in the industry that those retailers will definitely get the same benefits. So this applies to retailers broadly speaking, whether they're in a commercial office park. So let's say a good example is a restaurant, right? A restaurant in a commercial office park would qualify for pretty much the same benefits that we are applying in the shopping centers, but it is a case-by-case sort of scenario, and they would have to talk to their landlord. So I think the principle is always that you're going to have to engage the landlord as the tenant, and that then clearly these principles will be applied as consistently as possible in executing on this.
Okay, awesome. Let's go into the details around the different categories.
Perfect. So to take you through what looks like quite a complicated table, it does really make sense if you look at it from a big picture point of view. So I think the first differentiation which people have to make is between what we deem to be essential goods compared to non-essential goods. Okay, so what is essential? So essential would be pharmacies, it would be food suppliers. I think to some extent data and cell phone providers were included originally. And so those sections are currently operating and they trading. Okay, so if you look at the bottom half of this slide, you'll see essential goods and services. And those are generally, they are bigger clients, but ultimately they split into two as well. They split into those that are fully essential. So if you're only selling food and you've remained open in this period, you don't need help, and we can't afford to give you that help anyway as an industry. You must pay your rental, please, and pay your operating costs, and business carries on as if nothing went wrong. Then there are those clients that have, a Woolworths would be an example, which they've got food and clothing. The clothing's been closed. So there we are looking at dividing the non-essential from the essential. On the essential, they must pay, and there's no relief there. But on the non-essential, they will fall into the non-essential box, which we're going to go through now. So then we get to non-essential goods and services. And to give you an idea, if you're SMME and you've been open and you've been trading and you've been doing well, you don't need help. The package is designed not to help you, okay? It's designed to help those that need help and that have been closed.
Let's also clarify for the listeners. So when we're speaking about SMME retailers, we categorize these as retailers that's turning below 80 million per annum.
Correct. So it's a DTI definition, Sean. That's what we've basically used. So then when we look at the non-essential services, let's deal with the big guys first. So, clearly government and SOEs are a totally different category. So we haven't provided relief there. We as the taxpayers continue to support them generously, and we don't believe they need help at this point. The bigger clients, so this would be listed, unlisted clients, could be clothing retailers, etc. Effectively, the package for them is very simple to understand. For April and May, they only pay 50% of their rent, okay? And that rent will then be either, the other 50% is either discounted, and the percentages are there. So in April, we're offering 35% discount and 15% deferral. So in other words, they'll pay us that rent later. And in May, it's the other way around, 15% discount and 35% later. So quite easy to understand, and that deferral will be picked up over the 6-month period from the 1st of July.
And
so from a cash flow liquidity point of view, this is obviously the bigger end of town. They're effectively getting half from a cash flow point of view for the 2 months off. Okay.
Okay.
You got any questions there, Sean, just on that?
No, let's continue. We're picking up questions.
Then we're getting to obviously the very relevant piece, and in my mind, the piece which we've been spending the most time on, and certainly the most focus has been on this section. And this is also where the biggest amount of money is being spent or being offered, if you'd like, from a relief point of view. So SMMEs, these are all tenants with turnovers below 80. We've categorized them basically into 2 sections, right? Firstly, it's highly impacted. Now, what would highly impacted be? That would be tenants that have restaurants, tenants that are selling time, if you'd like. So once they have lost the opportunity to make that sale, that opportunity is gone forever. That could be a hairdresser, as example, travel agents, takeaways, those kind of people fall into this highly impacted category. The other category is what we call as medium impacted. So somebody has stock on their shelf. They didn't sell it in April, but they will potentially be able to sell it in May. So their sale isn't lost forever. So there is a little bit of ambiguity potentially, but I think every landlord, we've sort of tried to categorize the best we can at this point. And I think, you know, in a discussion with the landlord, they'll be able to put you into a category if you're SMME asking for relief. Let's look at the package of relief that we are looking at. So for the very highly impacted businesses, now clearly those businesses, we appreciate the fact that this is on the back of a really difficult economy. We've been now into a lockdown for 2-3 weeks. We've got a very good understanding that you know, cash flow is really, really tight. So in that band, because we're trying to cover such a broad spectrum of different retailers, and they've been impacted differently in many ways, that you'll see that there's quite a broad brush of discount being offered. So in other words, that's actual proper relief. You're never going to have to pay that rental ever, right? Between 100%. So in other words, actually the whole month of April, you know, some restaurants have just been given off entirely. They won't have to pay anything for the month of April. And then it ranges up to 35% discount. And then the balance is once again also potentially for the bigger, stronger businesses, we'll offer that balance in relief. Okay. In other words, you might not have to pay it in April, but you're going to be paying it back over a 6 to 9 month period. And then in May, that will be up, those discounts are up to 50% odd, and the balance will then be in deferments. So you can just kind of get an idea. We're trying to really help the cash flow for clients by
and that's going to be
them off.
And that will be so with the range of discounts between kind of relief and deferments, it will be at discretion of the landlord.
Correct.
Be able to.
And I'm going to talk to that a little bit, Sean. I think it's an important point that you raised there. I just want to take you through the medium quickly. So medium has also got a range between 35 and 50% discount, and then the balance in deferment. And then obviously for May, about 25% discount in the balance in deferment. Now, how do people actually access this? So the first thing is that you have to approach your landlord, or your landlord will actually be approaching you within the next couple of days, right? The second thing is they're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, because they're going to want to know and get a deep understanding of, you know, how your business looks, how it's been trading, what is the financial strength of you as the owner or the operator in that business, to understand, you know, to what extent this must be applied. Now, there is a level of opportunism. I can imagine everyone wants 100% off, okay? But there has to be a level of social responsibility from every operator here, in that, what are we trying to do as an industry? We're trying to work together with our tenants and the retail fraternity to try and get through this difficult period. And if you're very strong tenant, then you have to be prepared to pay a little bit more than somebody that is literally on the bones, right? And potentially without this help might fall over. So there is a little bit of a level of responsibility that each participant has to bring to the table. And what we are asking from tenants, you'll find the landlord will say, okay, you want relief. We have to have a discussion. We have to understand what your balance sheet looks like, what your income statement looks like, how much insurance you're going to have, and more or less what facilities you have, liquidity facilities from a banking point of view, to see you through this difficult time. Because clearly, to the extent that landlords aren't offering the facility to you, they're going to be offering it to other people that really need it. And at some point, they run out of capacity, and that might just mean that you used up some very, very good capacity that somebody else could have used potentially, that really, really needs it when you potentially might not need it. So what we are asking for is for tenants also to act responsibly. And I know it's a difficult thing because everybody clearly wants as much relief as they possibly can and pay as little as they possibly can. So I think, we're calling as an industry, both our members, being the property owners and the tenants, to try and act in a really good spirit of goodwill and good faith. And I think that more or less is the package set out.
How does the industry get impacted by the fact that, for instance, the Foschini Group or Pepco that has made statements that they would fall under the larger retailers, and what's the view of the industry on those type of calls from big players?
Yeah. So, I mean, to give you an idea, obviously big business, big end of the town, you would expect that those businesses to act or have more sensitivity in terms of their social responsibility in this scenario. But what we have seen is across the board, certainly the clothing retailers, and even some of, you won't believe it, even some of the essential services guys just haven't paid rental. Now, obviously, everybody's looking at it from their point of view. So clearly, all the tenants have got their own businesses. They're looking at their cash flow and liquidity. But you can imagine if you're sitting there as a small property owner and you haven't received a nickel from all your big tenants who are much bigger and financially much stronger than you are. It must be a very, very difficult situation, because on the other end, for every landlord, just so that everybody has a little bit of appreciation, the costs are actually pretty sticky. So it's not like we can overnight switch off and not buy stock, as an example, to try and protect my cash flow. If you go and look at the big cash flows for a landlord, clearly staff is one number, and we all trying to employ and keep our staff all employed. We've given that undertaking. The second one is rates and taxes, and let's call it administered costs, broadly speaking, utilities. Now, those utilities are charged to every tenant 2 months in arrears. So the utilities that you're paying this month in April were actually utilities from February, right? So the reality is from a legal perspective, you've used those utilities and you should be paying those utilities. And so should these big guys. They use the utilities, they should be paying the utilities. So that's the second component. And I think the other thing that also is a big factor in the real estate side is we've also got a big supply chain. We've got people in security, right? We've got people in the cleaning and hygiene services. We have insurance cover that's absolutely essential. in this time. All these kind of expenses are recovered, but they are pretty sticky expenses. And then there isn't probably a landlord in the country at this stage that doesn't have debt on their real estate, and they have to service those loans. That interest is not waivable. Some of the guys have gone and tried to do deals with the banks to maybe defer the payments, which helps a little bit. But the reality is both your business as well as the little business or the big business in real estate both have income and expense lines. And to the extent that those aren't working, there are consequences. So from the point of view of the large guys, what have we been doing? Obviously, we've put our best deal on the table, and we basically speaking to every one of them. I don't think the legal fraternity has helped a lot, Sean, to be honest, because they tend to, no good fight should be wasted from a legal perspective, probably. But they've been giving guys different advice, and some guys. We actually, as an industry, clearly we've got a lot of members, and they've got lots of legal opinions that have come through. But we've also taken senior counsel opinion on I don't want to say no names basis, but on the briefing was basically, you've got the situation, what's your view? End of story. So no kind of biased, and we've got two really very well recognized senior counsel that have given us views. And effectively the legal position is that the law is pretty weak in this area. I don't think that the law really has ever contemplated this sort of scenario in a leasing context. The leases do have a big bearing on what the actual outcome is from a legal perspective. But I think the sort of feeling around the table was, and maybe this is also one of the contributing factors to this package that we're offering as an industry, is to say rental and operating costs are payable, definitely payable. But because tenants have not been able to trade, there is a level of relief that is justifiable, and from a legal perspective as well. And because of that, we believe that as an industry, some of what you've seen here is part of that. But the deal you're getting here is better than your legal position, even if you assume no rental for 21 days. Yes. So we do think it is, even for the big guys, it's beneficial to look at the package. But I don't think it's in anybody's interest to end up in a legal sort of battle for the next couple of years on April's rental. So that's why for industry, we're looking at a more sustainable approach. We trying to act socially responsible in this process. And also, I think there's quite a level of goodwill coming out of the industry. I mean, the Department of Health asked for a couple of testing sites. And I think the list now that the group have come back with is pushing over 330 sites that they're offering for free to Department of Health. So I think most of the guys want to do the right thing, and they're really trying to help. They do have your interests at heart, albeit that you don't always feel that way as a tenant. They try and optimize the tenant mix in the shopping centers. They try and ensure that all the tenants trade as best possible by locating them in the right places and offering them appropriate packages from a rental perspective.
So Estelle, I was going to recap everything quickly, but I want you to also just give us a view after the recap around what do you believe is almost the impact on the industry post the COVID-19, and just be able to, especially for our listeners, give a view around what the industry is looking at in terms of its operations, and just the general impact in South Africa. So just to recap, the rental relief package is available for tenants within retail spaces or retailers operating within various other property spaces. It's a collective guidance and package that's been put together by the Property Industry Group, which is made up of SA REITs, SAPOA, and Shopping Centre Council, South African Shopping Centre Council. Each tenant still needs to be able to engage with their landlord on this package. You need to be in good standing as at 29th of Feb 2020. The intent is also that when a tenant takes up these packages, that they would not enforce any retrenchments. I think the key thing for the industry is to preserve those jobs as well. Another benefit is that there will be no evictions on those for the next 2 months on tenants that are in good standing and are taking up the packages. What the industry has done is they've categorized the packages in various components. One is for SMME retailers, and there they've used the DTI definition. So anyone turning less than 80 million per annum classifies for the SMME package, which is, there's two categories there. One is highly impacted retailers. So typically those are retailers like your restaurants or services, travel agents, hairdressers, people that are perishable goods. They could apply for that. And the package is really made up of 2 components. One is a relief, which is very much kind of a grant in terms of that in your rental, and then a deferment of that rental. So a component of it will then be deferred on an interest-free loan, which is payable over 6 to 9 months. The second level is medium impacted retailers. And there the relief is between 35 to 50% rental discount. And then the component of that would then be a rental deferment. This is applicable for April and May. And as you see from the screen in front of you, there's different components in terms of what will happen for April and what will happen for May. Then there's also non-essential goods services. Under that category, any SOEs and government tenants, there's no relief package at this point in time. And then also your essential goods services, your larger listed entities, they've structured an offering for them as well. All this will be also made available on our website at www.ettp.co.za. I'm sure SAPOA, SA REITs, and Shopping Centre Council will also have this information available. And I think just to summarize as well, we've seen over the past couple of weeks, quite a few different relief packages that's been put out in the market. Etienne, one of your estimations was that this package could be to the value of close to 2 to 3 billion of relief in the market, which is definitely one of the most progressive packages that's been put together in the market at this point in time. And we want to encourage other larger industries to be able to come to the fore and provide this level of relief, because one of the key things that we've noted over this time is that the economic impact on entrepreneurs and small businesses is great, and the offerings that's out there is really not enough to assist them. But ultimately, if you want to make sure that your business is sustainable, take up the package and rather adhere to what is available than to look at options that could lead you into arrears or that could lead you into a legal dispute. Estienne, just your view on the industry post-COVID-19.
Yeah, so I mean, clearly, I think the industry from a financial point of view, will have taken a big knock. And I think whether you Growth Point or whether you the smallest landlord out there, liquidity is a massive focus. In other words, making sure that we can pay our bills, making sure we can repay our interest and repay our debt, because the bigger companies obtain debt not only out of the banking market, but also out of the corporate bond market. And those investors are increasingly fickle. So in times are a bit tough, they duck like Donald, so to speak. And it is something that we'll be doing as an industry, is talking to those guys. But maybe let's just take each one of the 3 sectors. I think retail, clearly, let's assume a 21-day lockdown. I mean, we are realistic. We think that it'll take a little bit longer to get up and running to full speed again. You might find that it's phased. Clearly, we're promoting as an industry that the shopping centres open fully, and that things become more functional again. I think from a management point of view, we as real estate owners will have a big responsibility to ensure social distancing and managing and hygiene and all those kind of things. So I think retail, hopefully, will come back in the normal course, but it will take a little bit of time. Office, I think, obviously, if the lockdown lifts, everybody can go back to their offices and work from there. And I wouldn't be surprised if, there has been this sort of suspicion that everybody loves working from home, etc. And, I think what this has proved is that it is possible, but it's not ideal. So I think that actually offices, you'll have much more of a flexibility sort of trend in the office space. But certainly to my mind, if I had a choice between sitting here behind my desk for 8 hours or actually going to an office sort of scenario, I know which one I'd pick, and certainly the office I think will still remain as is, but also big responsibility on hygiene and distancing and all those kind of things. Industrial, I think, has been interestingly impacted. You wouldn't have expected industrial to be impacted the way it has been, but certainly the smaller operators, manufacturing, all those sectors have been impacted. And then the international context comes through quite seriously here, in that from that point of view, the supply chain from different countries, be it Germany or China, if you were looking for a lithium battery because you were worried about load shedding, it was very difficult to get any of those. And these are little examples. There's a plethora of these sort of examples that can be mentioned, and I think it'll take a little bit of time to get that back up and running. So industrial, I think, will also phase back slowly. Hospitality, now clearly the travel industry, airlines, any hospitality, whether you're a tour operator or a hotel, has been incredibly hard hit, and it'll take that sector, probably of the three sectors, the longest to come out of that, because they have to build that confidence again and build up their order book, so to speak, the travelers coming back. And I think maybe what we'll find is that for South Africa context, I've always had, clearly the lockdown wasn't anticipated the way it actually played out. But I always thought that my first reaction was, well, if the international tourists aren't coming, maybe we'll see a bit of a spike in local tourism, not anticipating a total lockdown in the country. But I think initially the local tourism will probably have a bit of an impact, and you'll see that people that would have gone overseas, those markets aren't always open at the moment. You might struggle to go to the US on your holiday if you're keen on international travel. I think more guys will be spending time locally, and we'll certainly promote local tourism from that aspect. The interesting one is hospitals. You'd expect hospitals to be doing particularly well in this environment, and what we have seen is that actually hospitals have been quite negatively impacted, because all the elective surgery has been stopped by the Department of Health, and anesthetists have to be on the ready to assist with COVID patients. So what we have seen is a lot of the hospitals that rely on elective surgery, that surgery would be, surgery that patients have the election of timing on, that has been deferred quite materially. Now, I don't think that goes away. It's not, talks to those highly and medium impacted. I do think that surgery will happen over time, but there's limited capacity within the healthcare space to manage it, and you might find that when they do come back, it'll be quite busy times at some of those hospitals. I think generally across the country, I think our economy is going to be very materially impacted, Sean. The Reserve Bank and National Treasury.
In terms of the economy being impacted, so we've got about 68% of the attendees are retailers, and all of them most probably small businesses as well. Maybe in closing on that, is what advice would you give small businesses during this time and post-COVID?
Sure. So I think the business principles remain the same, whether you Growth Point or the smallest business out there. The reality is to make sure that you manage your liquidity very carefully. The money that you're getting in, make sure to the extent that you have people owing you money, you try and actively get that money in as best possible. You might be in a similar position that the real estate industry finds it, where you're going to have to give some pass it forward, so to speak, the relief, and give some of those people that owe you money a little bit of relief as well. I think it's important to be honest and talk to all the people that you owe money to, and specifically your banks and financial institutions. Anecdotally, the banks have been telling, because we speak to them all the time, that just in the real estate space, where they would have typically 15 queries per month for additional debt, they had 300 this month. So you can see the trend. I think the banks are feeling the pressure in terms of the amount of queries for liquidity, but to the extent that you can put facilities in place and have them ready, that if things are a bit tight, that if you're not getting the income that you thought you had, you can pay your bills. That is important. And I think, if all of us can do the best we can to ensure we at least pay our staff and pay our supply chain as best we possibly can. In other words, not going to total lockdown like what we've seen some of the bigger retailers have done. I think that is certainly something that we would, try and advise, but, taking a responsible view on your liquidity. And I think what Sean and what you guys are doing is wonderful, Sean. Well done. I think educating us all on what's available in terms of the stimulus packages that we can apply for as businesses is a important thing, that everybody knows maybe how to do it, and if they can do it, and where to go. That's all quite important.
Okay, Ethan, thank you so much. On that note, we will be closing the session. We want to encourage everyone to please join this afternoon session. We'll be hosting CIFA, and they'll be unpacking the DSBD SMME Relief Fund, and that will be at 1 o'clock. And I know that we were not able to get to all the questions or able to answer all the questions, but all the information will be made available. This will be available on YouTube as well. If you have any specific queries, go to our YouTube channel at Entrepreneurship to the Point, and hopefully see everyone this afternoon at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Sean, it might be worth just making a list of all those questions, right?